Welcome to Rising Woman Leaders. I'm your host, Meredith Ram, and I believe the time has come for women to share their gifts, their voice, and their stories. I love seeing women spiritually and financially empowered, thriving in their life's work, and doing what they love every day. I've gathered a community of women living their dreams to tell us their stories and inspire us to step into more courage, self-love, and feminine leadership. If you like this podcast, follow me on Instagram at Rising Woman Leaders and sign up for email updates at risingwomanleaders.com. Now get cozy with a journal and a cup of tea. I hope you enjoy today's show. We've been working on a whole new masterclass for you here at Rising Woman Leaders. It's all about 5 shifts to elevate your voice, your impact, and your income. In this webinar, I'm going to be sharing a step-by-step game plan to make more money and have more confidence, even if you consider yourself a highly sensitive person and are afraid of visibility, sharing your voice, or being seen. I'm going to be sharing about how our clients design a life with feminine freedom, live out their sacred mission, and make a huge impact through their work without needing to work jobs on the side or having to be behind a computer all day. I'm going to be sharing how to own your worth and step into a flow of abundance without being salesy or pushy, and how to build a movement around your message, even if you don't have a huge following yet. And best of all, you'll learn how to live in alignment with your soul's purpose so that at the end of your life, you feel a deep sense of fulfillment that you really did what your soul came here for. So I'm going to include that link in the show notes. Make sure you check it out. You can also find that link at bit.ly/RWL-masterclass. That's all lowercase, bit.ly/RWL-masterclass. I hope you enjoy the free masterclass and today's show with Devon. I'm here today with Devon Walz, who is a professional artist, muralist, mentor, and dreamer. She believes that creativity and beauty are powerful medicine for us all and sees her own art as the most essential way to know herself. Through her colorful and etheric feeling abstract paintings, she explores the ways that emotion, energy, and form collide. Devon mentors developing creatives along their path and helps them to realize their most honest expression. Her approach is one that combines practical strategy, emotional healing, and deep love. In addition to mentorship and online courses, she hosts one-on-one painting weekends for artists and non-artists alike to make a mess, break out of perfectionism, and discover their soul's language in her Southern California art studio. Her work has been licensed by companies big and small and is held by collectors around the globe. Welcome, Devon.
Having me, Meredith.
Yeah. So I guess it was a couple years ago we connected first. I got to be part of your summit for creativity and expression, and I got to share about my book, and that was an honor. And so it's so nice to have you here to share in this conversation. And I mean, the first thing that came up for me when I thought about having this conversation with you was about creativity and the creative process and just the act of being creative. As like, I was talking to my neighbor about this, how it's when you are creative, you're working with the laws of the universe. Like plants are always creating, stars are always like creating and becoming something new and clashing into each other. And there's just this energy in the universe that is constantly growing, evolving, creating. And there's this idea, I know Elizabeth Gilbert talks about it too, is that when you're being creative, you are working with those laws of the universe. You feel happier, you feel more fulfilled, you feel healthier. It's like you're in the alignment. And I wanted to just start with that and hear about your take on creativity and what that's been like for you.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more with everything that you're saying. I do think that creation and creativity is like a fundamental element of the universe, like much like you're saying. So anytime that we step into our own creativity and we put something new together into the world and we engage with that, we're much more in alignment with our true nature. And I think that's why creating and making art, I know for many, and very much including myself, is a deeply healing act, because it does pull us into alignment with that. And so, yeah, that's a big part of my own story and a big part of my experience as well when I make art. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know a lot can come up in the way when we think about sitting down to be creative. I love making collages, and I have to say, it's not all the time that I'm making them. It's like kind of takes a lot of effort and intention to really set the space for it. I actually grew up with my mom, who's an artist. She's a watercolor painter. And I was always amazed at how almost like that element of discipline for her to go out into nature and set aside the time and make it happen. And every day she was creating, and it was like, wow, okay, how do you cultivate that? And I'd love to hear from you just what it's been like, running away from your art, coming back to it, and just the whole process of actually doing it.
Yeah, well, that's a huge thing that comes up for many, many people. So I could definitely speak to that and what I see when I work with other artists. But I can say for myself, my own story is that I turned to making art out of like a dire need for just something for myself in a form of therapy. And once I started doing it and I saw, how helpful it was, that was kind of like a natural, I guess, way to get me over any resistance that came up. Is like I felt so much better when I was doing it. So even if I was like tired or would have rather just like chilled out and watched Netflix or whatever, there was something inside of me that kept pulling me back in because I could feel just how my quality of life was shifting. And then as I got more serious about it, that was when I was just like in college and kind of like doodling in my room. And it was all very low pressure. I wasn't like making art with a capital A. I was just engaging. But then when things got a little bit more serious for me and I started painting in acrylic and working really big, and things kind of went to a whole new level and my relationship with things shifted, I think part of the resistance that would come up for me would be, like, is this going to let me down? Like, is this thing that I love going to go away? Or is it going to become really difficult? Or am I going to find something out about myself that I don't like I'm not very good, or this isn't really for me? And so in the times when I found myself having a really difficult time showing up, I found that what was really needed was a trust in my love for what I had found. And almost like cultivating a relationship with a partner, trusting that it would be there for me, that like it would continue to give me what I needed if I continued to put in the love and the discipline and the effort. But I had many times of showing up and having a bad painting day and then questioning everything, and feeling like it was that much more difficult to get into the process next time. And so there was a lot of push and pull in that department. But eventually, I think that call to continue to trust the process is what over time maybe allowed me to be somebody who is maybe more like what you witnessed with your mom, where she was able to just show up consistently. But I think it was cultivating the relationship that allowed me to become more that way and show up on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and reminding yourself of the benefits that you receive when you're doing it. That's, I mean, for anything, I think that we have resistance to, like exercise or like remembering how you're going to feel when you're just doing it, or when you finish, and that sense of feeling proud. And I find art to be very intuitive, and I'm curious about your relationship to your intuition and how that has shifted and shaped since you started doing more art.
Yeah. Well, I think if anything, art has given me an outlet to be my like very intuitive, free flowing, sensitive self. I think I always had that going on in life, but I didn't necessarily have a place to engage with it. And the thing that art has given me is a way to engage with a physicalized version of my intuition or psychicness or emotionality. So my art being abstract is pretty much all process based. I make a huge effort to let things be spontaneous and to follow the ideas that come through in the moment. And again, that's a process of trust, right? And so I think it's helped me get to know how my intuition operates, and to be able to hear the little nudges as they come up, because I'm so used to, at this point, encountering them in this very physical way. It's like art with the paint in your hand and the surface and the whole thing. It's like this physical practice where you get to meet those abilities. And so I think in that sense, it strengthens them for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine that once you understand those little intuitive nudges and voices, that it's like when it comes to bigger decisions in your life, you have used that muscle. Like you have, you understand what it feels like and to listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like creating art. There's so many parallels to the way we run our lives, especially as entrepreneurs. I know that you're one in your audience. Many of them might resonate with like running a business. And so this process of trusting the nudges and creating something out of nothing is really carried over to like how we create our lives, because often we don't know what's going to come of our actions, and we do have to like just trust what comes to us. And I've really, the more I've made art, the more I've really been able to see how it's really not that different in life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, getting comfortable with the unknown and not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And releasing expectations and like attachments to the outcome.
Yeah.
You might go into something thinking, I'm going to, making art, I'm going to paint this vase of flowers. And then it like turns into something totally different.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that too is like letting go of how we think things should look. And, I really, I'm not sure how to perfectly word this, but a big driving force for me is innovation. And especially within my art, like making something that feels really unique to me. Of course, nothing is 100% original, but really wanting to create something that just feels like on the leading edge of creation, right? So you can never know how that's going to look beforehand. And I really have to engage with the process in order to find out the answer to that question. Yeah. And life is really like that too, especially if you're at the leading edge of like your field, or like so many of us are doing, just in terms of even the way we engage in relationships and the lives we create for ourselves. It's like we want to create something that maybe we haven't seen in the past and in generations before us. And so we don't know what it's going to look like until we follow through with the nudges and let it come to fruition. And so much of the painting process is like that for me as well.
Yeah. And that just reminds me of, making art is such a spiritual practice, because where is that coming from? What's your relationship to that? Or just, the mystery, the like where that creativity or energy or those nudges are coming from for you?
Yeah. What is my relationship to that? It's almost so integrated and inherent in my being and the way that I operate that I don't know if I've actually thought about what my relationship to it is in words, but it's definitely ever present. I'm always I guess I would say that I'm very aware that much of my creative process is an engagement with that side of life that we can't see. And I actually see my work and what I'm creating and potentially what my contribution, part of it might be, is giving form to that side of life and giving it a container in a way for it to be seen and experienced by other people. That's much of what I think of my art as, which is why it's abstract and like you're not really going to be able to derive a whole lot of meaning in a human way from it or recognize many elements. But my goal with it is just to transmit a feeling. And that comes from kind of dancing in that bridge between the unseen when I'm in my process and taking the nudges as they come, and engaging with that and bridging that over into the physical world. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why learning to trust in all ways, shapes, and forms has been a huge theme throughout like my creative journey as a whole. Because it's just an essential element, like if that's your mission and if that's your intention. So even if I can't fully understand it, I guess my answer to it is like, I'm always just trying to trust deeper and deeper that that's what's going on. And that's part of what I'm here to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And can you tell us a little bit of your story and how you came to even create art? I know that it came through, just your own personal journey. So love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So I was alluding to this a bit earlier, but when I was in like my junior year of college, I think, I was at UC Berkeley, and I had always struggled with depression and exhaustion and deep pain, like throughout all of my teenage years, but it really like hit this culmination point in maybe this like 4-year stretch of time between starting in my junior year of college. And I was coping in all the kinds of unhealthy ways that we do. But I remember I just got this nudge, like I need to do something for myself. Like I need to help myself in some way that isn't drinking or zoning out. And so I just got the nudge to like get a box of crayons and a sketchbook and put my headphones on and just like try and be with myself. And that was really how it started. And I saw how that was really helping me. I mean, I still had my vices, but it gave me something new. It gave me just this little spark that I couldn't understand at the time at all. All I knew was that like I needed to keep doing it. And so then after college, I did a lot of traveling. I did like 6 months through Asia, and then I moved back to the Bay, and then I traveled again. And I was kind of just like bouncing all over the place, just trying to be okay. And the whole time, not fully understanding what was going on. But then it was really a time when I had moved back to Berkeley again, and I got the nudge to just start doing things in a really, really big way. So I got like a bunch of really big canvases, and I transitioned over to acrylic paint, which was a totally different process than like sitting with crayons and pens in my room. You know, it was like engaging with everything I felt in this much more dramatized way. And I really had this like 6-month period of time where at that point my depression had really hit a point where I couldn't work anymore. The job I was at, I just eventually stopped going, and I was struggling obviously a ton financially. And it was a really dark period where I really couldn't do anything at all. I was so exhausted. But the one thing I committed to doing was just like painting every single day. Because it was the only way I could connect with myself and my aliveness. And it was almost like this initiatory period where through doing that, I somehow came out the other side feeling different and like feeling more capable of like working my way back into a job and socializing and feeling a little bit better. And that was really the catalyst for a huge journey that unfolded afterward. And that was about 4.5 years ago now. And I can honestly say that through painting, like I'm a completely different person, or I should say I am completely more myself. I'm completely like more reconnected to who I've always been. And there's been a lot of other healing modalities within that naturally, like as healing journeys go. But I can honestly say that it was that commitment to painting that even allowed me the capability to find the other things that would help me along the way. So first and foremost, although my relationship to making art has evolved a lot now, like I'm pursuing it professionally and now I want to paint murals, and I'm kind of in this whole other phase with it. That's not just art therapy. And I'm asking myself questions like, what do I want to create in the world? And who am I as an artist? And where do I want to see my work? And it's like this whole other phase, right? It feels really good to even acknowledge where this all came from, which is that like this really started as a healing journey to me, and one that I am in deep reverence of because I know how powerful it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is so much of what I was hearing. I went to see Elizabeth Gilbert speak recently. She came to our town. She has a new book out, and she said like creativity is an antidote to depression, anxiety, even grief. It's like you lose yourself in a way when you are in the act of creating.
Yeah.
And you're just so present with it. And then I think that piece of you start realigning yourself with the energy of the universe, that everything else begins to flow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really something that came to mind, and then you named it, is it's like that presence piece. And it's like, it allows you to be present at that time. For me, I really needed to be present with like what was going on with me and what I was feeling. But I didn't know how to do that. And painting really gave me a way to calm my nervous system enough, invite God or spiritual or spirit in enough to allow me to really process and pull out everything that was going on within me, and clearing out a lot of the things that were really weighing me down. But it's that, I mean, healing, no matter what modality you're relying on, I would imagine inherent in almost all of it is that presence piece. And art really gave me that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you've started this business now. It's been 4 or more years of just working and as an artist and a mentor. And so how do you stay true to building your business, with your values and in alignment, knowing that we live in a very fast-paced society that's a lot about ambition and achievement and pushing and forcing and all of that?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely like one of the most challenging parts of the journey for me personally. And it's been a huge theme because even though I would say that I'm very, at this point, happy and healthy, I'm also somebody who like needs a ton of rest. I would say more than the average person. Like I don't have that pushing energy within me. It's just not my natural state at all, which I think even more has forced me to look at like, how am I going to do this and be in integrity with myself? And it's been a journey, and I've been totally imperfect. And I've totally had to push the line in order to find where the line is. But for me, it is like a 1000% prioritizing of self-care and being really in tune with what that means for me. So like I have things that I just straight up don't compromise on anymore. I have a very strict bedtime that I only push past if I know it's going to be really worth it, or if it's going to be for something that is going to leave me more energized. I also have made a practice of feeling into my body while I'm working, especially doing like computer work stuff. And if I start to feel that I am overworking or I'm pushing myself past my creative limit, I stop. And that has taken me a long time to cultivate, because you know how it is, you're writing a sales page, like you just want to get it done. And like, usually there's not a lot of time, and the newsletters have to be sent and all the things, right? But I had so many launches and things that led to just burnout, where I was like, I'm not going to be able to create anymore if I don't get a hold on this. Like my energy system just isn't designed for it. And the thing that I've really learned is it's our ego that wants to control and push everything out because we want to ensure a good outcome. But when we just let that go, and we're more in tune with our body, like my business is done better. Like, and I do better. I can create more, and I'm of better service to the artists that I mentor, and I'm of better service to my work. And so it's really just choosing the messages of your body over the egoic fears that everything's going to totally fail if we listen to what we really need.
Mm-hmm. I think that burnout is like a number one just block or preventative thing from being creative, because it's like you can't be in that flow of just like juicy creative energy when you're so tired or have pushed yourself so hard. It's I was talking about this with Anastasia, how like when we go on a retreat or when we take time away from our daily lives and we're just, you know, for her like dancing, or for me like doing yoga, or it's like that's when the creative downloads come. Like, you know, this we're in a society that has so much input all the time. It's like social media, emails, the news app on your phone, like everything is just so much information coming in. And I think it's also really hard to be creative when it's just like all this input. You need to create the space where there's just nothingness, or you're just with yourself, or or you're unplugged for a few days, and then it's like, oh, it starts flowing again.
Yeah, absolutely. That is really something that many of us are lacking. That is needed, is we need an empty space in order to be connected to new ideas. Like if we're just in constant output mode, we're never going to receive what we need. That is like really carrying the energy that we want to be bringing forward. So it's super important.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the other blocks you see around holding people back from being creative and visionary in their work?
I mean, I see a ton of just fear in general, and that might be really obvious, but the thing that it usually comes down to when I'm working with other artists is like there is some deep fear around, they're all individual to the people, but some examples might be like getting rejected, or like, you know, having everybody point the finger at them and say like, you're not worthy, this isn't good, who do you think you are? And a lot of it is like fear of judgment, but usually just starts on the surface level, right? Of like, oh, I feel a little overwhelmed by that idea, or like I'm having a hard time showing up. But usually when we break it down, it's usually some sort of belief pattern that is much more deeper rooted. So that's a huge block. Another thing that I see, I call it the shoulds block, especially when it comes to art, but even with business too, or anything creative out in the world, is like, if it's something that we haven't seen done before, we have a hard time like seeing validity in it. We also have all these templates around us, right, of like how people are making art or running a business or doing X, Y, Z. And that often influences and hinders like what our true expression or creation would be. And we think that we're confined to what we already see done. Or if a big one is like, if we only see people who look like us or come from similar backgrounds as us, we think that like we can't be that thing. And so that's a huge one I see coming up. I'm trying to think if there's a third that feels like relevant or worth mentioning. Yeah, another one that I feel called to talk about is not trusting what I call our own creative authority. So this is like a self-trust issue. So when we're in the creative process and we get an idea, people who have this block might instantly see everything wrong with that idea, or instantly see how it's not going to work out and instantly question it. And what that is they haven't developed a relationship with their own like creative driver. And that's probably because they've learned to distrust it because it maybe got them in trouble when they were a kid. or they've been shut down in some way, so they don't see their own ideas as worthy. And with that block, it's like we're really required to redevelop a relationship with that voice within us. So those, I would say those are the three like biggest ones I see repeating over and over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And any solutions or things you want to share about just like how you work with people, some of the things you've found to really help people work through those?
Yeah. So the number one thing, like no matter what your holdup or your block is like we need to be really clear on your intentions and why you're doing what you're doing. I can't tell you how many people I meet with where I'm like, okay, well, let's like put all these external things and external goals out the window. Like, why are you making art in the first place? Like, what is this even for? And why do you want to do this? And I could say the same for business or any other project. And it's shocking to me, like how many times they're like, wow, I haven't even thought of that. And so getting clear, or the other thing is too, is like, well, I really want to be a good artist, or I really want to be a good healer or a good business owner. And I'm like, well, what does that mean to you? What is a good healer or a good artist, or what's the criteria? And it's like, it's all based in these ideas that they've seen. And so they're disconnected from their own truth. So it's like, we have to have that truth as a guidepost for how to even answer these blocks as they come our way. So that's just like foundational. And then the second thing, especially with the deep-rooted fears, and it's kind of related to the creative authority that I was talking about as well, is to first develop a keen sense of awareness. So as you're working through the process and you notice you're having resistance, is like really turning up the awareness dial to be like, oh, this is happening. I'm not just in a bad mood, or I'm not just tired. This is a thought I've had over and over, or this comes up every time I sit down to work on this. Mm-hmm. So first, like noticing the patterns, and even that in and of itself can shift things. But then like once we've gotten really, really familiar with what's going on with us, I think it's about asking deeper questions. Like, where is this coming from? Why do I feel this way? And being open to the possibility that it's not just because you're afraid that you're going to share some art and people aren't going to like it. There's probably something deeper than that. And even just being open to the possibility that the stories running through our mind have much deeper roots is a huge shifter. And then what I would do in working with people is help them discover those roots. And then I find that in the discovery process and in the awareness process, so much can shift naturally. But if you're doing this on your own, I would say just starting to become extremely curious and open to the fact that it really doesn't have to do with what's going on in the present moment, but it's just something that you've been carrying. And all of that can heal a ton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for those solutions. Those are really helpful. Yeah. How do you see art shifting consciousness? I mean, you spoke a little bit about the mindfulness and the awareness that we can have around noticing our patterns, but yeah, taking this even further of just how art can play in society in this way.
Yeah, so this is such an important topic to me because I think particularly with people who make visual art or performing art or something that they don't necessarily see as service-based, they might have a harder time connecting to the purpose behind it. But what I really see is that at this fundamental level, we're really bringing in, for lack of a better word, like codes, especially when we're talking about like art, and it could be like music too, you know. We're really bringing in and grounding in what will be the basis for other people to springboard off of. So it's really like grounding in that energy in physical form. And that I see is really like bringing in the new energy of where we would like to head, even if it's not in an idea or an action or, you know, a clear message yet, but it's just in this like raw artistic form. That's really important to have present here in the physical because it ripples out and touches other people who are going to go out and like, you know, build the farm and like start the movement and heal the people and speak the words. And so we really need that ripple effect, and artists are playing a huge role in like just waking up at those other things that need to be done. And that's kind of how I view it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that piece of just like you're bringing the codes in,
Yeah.
especially if you're so connected into the unseen world. It's like that is another vehicle for
Yeah.
lifting and awakening consciousness.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so passionate about like bringing art back into the forefront and like really valuing it. I know that as a society, like it's often why artists struggle to support themselves, is like real art isn't necessarily prioritized or seen as like so valuable and so important in a lot of circles. But it's like, it's why we need to live with art and engage with art and go see it live and do these things, because it's like you're receiving so much by doing that and supporting and living with that. It's like, it's important for me to have the work of other artists in my home and to go out and engage with it as well. Because it just adds so much to what we're able to access. And I really would love for that to be seen as a valid and important way of being in the world as a visionary and as an innovator and somebody who's creating important work. That like that engagement with art is fundamental to our being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a question I like to ask a lot of my guests too, is just around facing fears. And I'm curious for you, perhaps in the last year, maybe longer, like what's a fear or fears that have been coming up, and how have you faced them or overcome them?
That is such a good question. I love it. I feel called to share that isn't something that isn't like directly related to art, but it's definitely shown up.
Mm-hmm.
I have a big fear about doing harm. About It's an old story about being a bad person, and that and the thing is the way that presents is you want to play small, because if you believe that you're going to do harm or hurt others by engaging in the world, you're not going to want to make yourself big. Like you think you're doing a service by holding yourself back. And that's shown up for me in a lot of different ways in my personal relationships and in my business and otherwise. But that's really like what I've been working with and grappling with. Like that's kind of what's been up for me. And I mean, that's huge for business, because in order to like really grow, we have to believe that, especially if you're a heart-centered business owner, like we have to believe that we're contributing something positive, and that our voice matters, and that it's a good thing to show up and to play big. And so, yeah, that's what I've really been working. Was the second part of the question how I've been facing that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you kind of answered, but
Okay.
Yeah, anything else you want to share?
I mean, the awareness of it has been huge. Just looking at the patterns and seeing like, oh, that's why I do that. That's why I choose this kind of relationships, or that's why I act this way. That's been huge. I think finding experiences where it's been reflected to me that I am a positive presence has been really valuable. I've been going to retreats led by Rachel Maddox, who's a trauma healer who's really wonderful. And I've had many other just in my personal life experiences as well, where just lining up with that reflection of, and taking the intentionality to notice it myself. Like, oh, by me being here, I really helped this person. And seeing how the right loving people perceive me and appreciate me has been healing in that sense. So, yeah.
Yes, definitely. I really relate to this. This has been a big one for me too. The fear of hurting others by being too bright and shiny and big. So, because of course, like there have been times in my career where I see someone who's like so shiny and bright and beautiful, and that like brings up those questions of like, oh, am I not enough? Or just knowing if that's something you've ever experienced, then it's like when you go to, really share yourself in a big way and do something really big, that can be like, oh, I don't want others to feel that way because I know how hard that was. And I've really had to shift that into, even though it might trigger some people or be hard for some people, it's actually a service to them. And
yeah, absolutely.
it's an invitation for them to step up too, and to see where they're holding back or where they're playing small, and to look for support and resources so that they can live their fullest expression too.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so interesting you say that, because as I've healed this more, I've noticed that I'm more attracted to and seeking out bigger, brighter, embodied, powerful people, because being around them gives me permission to be in what I am now seeking to embody. Whereas before, maybe that might have been more overwhelming for me. So it's just like this signal within myself, that I'm healing. And then also a reminder that like, oh, when I'm that way, I can also be permission for the people who are wanting to step into that as well.
Yeah. It's so much better when we're just
it's more fun.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun. And I feel like our soul, that's what our soul really wants for us, and really wants for everyone, is to be in the full expression and the brightness and the shining. And
and the joy.
I work a lot with the archetype of the queen. So I think of the queen as just like this. She's like, I will not make myself small so that other people can feel comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, do you want to share with us just what's coming up in your business, what you're working on, what projects you're excited about?
Yes. Well, it's actually an interesting trajectory, as I was like referring to that shifted moment where I started making my art big, because my recent focus in the past 4 months has been murals. So that's like a whole other level of making my expression big. So I'm really loving bringing this like unseen world in its full expression into spaces, and like transforming places that where people gather or work or anything, or even into people's homes. So like I've been loving doing murals and seeking more opportunities to do them. That's been amazing. I'm also still going very deep in terms of mentoring other artists. That really lights me up and fulfills me. I'll be taking a new round in like 3 to 4 weeks time. I have to look at my calendar, but that'll be coming up. I'll be opening that up again. And I'm also in the process of creating something new that'll be out next week. So I'm sure by the time this comes out, it'll already be a thing. Which is all about just helping artists like set up in a business sense. I think from mentoring other artists, I realize, you know, I've always had a bit of a background in entrepreneurship. I used to work behind the scenes of businesses, and I always did freelancing, and learning the online world and how to run a business was always just like a natural draw for me. But I'm realizing in working with other artists that for so many of them, it's not. And that there's these fundamental things that feel overwhelming that are really holding them back from getting their work out there and having things be easeful so they can focus more on what they really want to create. So I'm putting out sort of like a roadmap for artists seeking to do that. And always welcoming people into my studio if they want to come throw paint around too.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Yeah. And your art too is for sale, or do you do shows?
Oh, yeah,
how is that? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like so focused on the murals and the other things. Yes. I just a new series of work, which is like called Scenes from a Vibrant Life. And it's this shift in that my work before was like very soft, and it was all about the inner world, and very like flowy and dreamy. And this is still that, but these pack a louder punch. And it's actually kind of like what we were talking about. I think it kind of mirrors a theme I've been working through, which is like embracing the joy and the boldness and the radiance. And these are really about that for me. So those are available on my website. I just released those, so I'll be going into like a more quieter phase in terms of releasing new art, probably for the next couple months as I explore like, you know, what is next in that department. But yes, my art is for sale. And I just finished up a big show that I did in the beginning of the year, so I probably won't show in person again, at least maybe until next year. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's devonwalz.com. Is that your...
Devonwalz.com. Okay. My last name is Walz. Everybody thinks there's a T, but there is not. And a great place to follow and connect with me is also on Instagram.
Beautiful. I'll include those links in the show notes so everyone can check those out. Any final words, any closing words you want to leave our audience with before I just say a short prayer?
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind for this audience, I don't know why, is just like create, even if it's in a lighthearted way. Like you need to bring in that new energy and that life force. So like try something new, like try something from when you were a kid. You don't have to show anybody, but like just do something for yourself. Like it could be the thing that like literally changes your life.
Yeah, that's such good advice. I think to just have fun, to come from innocence, playfulness.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, you just started with a sketchbook and a box of crayons. So.
Literally.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's just take a moment to center in and just feeling into the gratitude of everything that you've shared with us today. Thank you so much. And just feeling this collective, all the people listening here today, just welcoming them into their highest expression of creativity and truth and sharing themselves fully in the world. I'll just bring my hands to my heart, and may we all continue to walk this path, shining at our brightest and being the full expression that we came here to be. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to our show today. We would love to hear what you think. Take a moment to hop on over to iTunes and leave us a review. We'd be so grateful to receive it. Until next time, namaste.